everyone. Welcome back to Manufacturing Hub on this Wednesday afternoon. You guys have been catching a lot of really awesome recorded content from all of the places that Vlad and I have been the last couple of weeks as Vlad and I have traveled, I don't know, nearly the entire east coast of the U.S. On a couple of different things between the both of us. So we're super excited to be back here live and in person. Excited to have Davide back on, and we will go ahead and reintroduce him and let you guys learn a little bit about him again. Having said that, a couple of fun announcements. One theme that we're rolling into starting now going into November is the Systems Integrator theme. So we've got a couple of fun topics that we're trying to put together for you guys, starting with Davide on the robotics side and going and continuing over the next 3 or 4 weeks. While we're doing that, we've also got some great content coming out from ICC, which is, I guess it's already been a month ago. It feels like we were just there 2 weeks ago, but I suppose it's already been a month. So if you guys missed a couple of episodes ago, we had Travis Cox back on talking about 8.3, talking about the new event, the new event venue and everything else. This week we've got David Grusenmeyer coming up on Monday as a recap, and we're talking about the student build-a-thon, and we're talking about all of the really awesome work that they've done on the educational side in order to go support and bring the next generation of automation engineers and designers and developers up to speed on how we hopefully are doing things in 2025 and beyond. So definitely a conversation that you guys want to make sure to see. Having said that, and without further ado, everyone, welcome to Manufacturing Hub. This is episode 233. If you guys have been here, if you guys haven't been here before, welcome. If you have been here before, welcome back. If you guys haven't been here before, every week or just about every week, we have a fun conversation talking about different topics. Again, this month we're talking about the systems integrators. We're talking with Davide about robotics and kind of that sort of work all throughout Texas. So if you guys have questions or comments, please feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll do our very best to go get to them. If we don't get to them live on the conversation, we'll do our very best to get back to them without that. Having said that, Davide, we want to officially welcome you back. And before I forget to say it, last episode you were on was episode 129. Most of the time I've got that on the side. I forget to say it. And then we're 90 minutes into the conversation and I'm like, go check this out. So if you guys want to learn more after the show, after the conversation, check out episode 129. That'll also be in the show notes.
Good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Davide, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate the time. I think it's going to be a great conversation. Always excited to speak with someone who is a practitioner doing a lot of the integration work on the plant floors and solving some of the complex or seemingly simple challenges from the outside, but very complex, once you get to it. Ultimately, we have a couple of bullet points lined up for the conversation today, but I wanted to get your background. It has been quite a bit of time, where you are at today, what you are doing, what kind of maybe clients you're working with. And ultimately, we also want to get your scoop on the show that you have coming up in Texas in only a couple of weeks now. So could you give us the overview of all of those things?
Yes. Thank you again, for having me, guys. It's been, a pleasure following you and be back here at the show. It's from 129 to 233, so a big jump. There are a lot of conversation in between, but yeah. So right now we are here. From the first interview, we were able to grow a little bit more and add some more people. We are 5, plus, let's say, some subcontractors here and there. We were able to get a shop, and then also you mentioned more robotics application. We were able to handle, to develop, and to commission, right? So a lot of more opportunities, very exciting times. But yeah, my background real quick, I'm from Italy, and I came from there at the end of 2012, and with my oil and gas background, went through, a couple of jobs, landed in Puerto Rico, then then moved to Florida a little bit, and then finally here in Texas, first to Houston, and then finally up here in Fort Worth, DFW. Yeah, from oil and gas now, fully the factory automation, manufacturing.
Hmm.
That's kind of quick background, yeah.
What about the event that you have had, I guess, last year and have coming up a little bit later in a few weeks? Could you tell
Yes,
us a little
so
bit more on that side?
yes, the event is called like Automation Stars of Texas. He came up as an idea after Automate, that we had a booth there, and then with some partners, people, we know in the industry, we said, hey, why don't we don't do something, here locally, I said, I had that idea, in my mind, but now I guess let's put it together. So we did it last year in this period of time, pretty much end of October, and it came out pretty good. Um, Even though the organization wasn't the best, but we organized like pretty much in 3 months. So we are repeating this year. The date are going to be like December 9th and 10th, and the format pretty much the same with a big space, let's say a ballroom of a hotel, which is south of the DFW airport.
Hmm.
So with exhibitors, we have, of course, all the partners we work with, from robotics to automation to sensors, connectivity, things like that, and then plus we have like a meeting room, let's say, where we have a bunch of speakers. We have some training or introduction to training, discussion about manufacturing, AI, and yeah, that's what the topics, of course, that we provide solutions, right?
Awesome. Let me, I guess, take a step back. So you've mentioned, and I guess the general perception of the Texas, at least automation landscape and manufacturing landscape, is generally in oil and gas, right? And you've mentioned that you've definitely touched that industry, but ultimately ended up pivoting more towards robotics. So I guess I'd be curious, for someone who is an outsider, maybe trying to understand what kind of opportunities are available in Texas, could you paint us maybe a more cohesive picture, right? What kind of manufacturers are there? What kind of industries? Is oil and gas very dominant? Are there too many players maybe on that side to compete perhaps? And what did that look like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, like I mentioned, I oil and gas, it's my background. Like back in Europe, I work like with big producers over there, and actually, we were buying a lot of equipment, in Houston, Texas, right? So that's why when I start thinking moving over here, I aimed for Houston. I said there, that's where I can actually find a job right quickly because
Hmm.
of my background, and it was true, right? Which again, nowadays, moving to nowadays from back, let's say 2014, that's where I was able like to move here in Texas, and it didn't change too much as far as oil and gas is still pretty dominant, let's say. The area, more active area is the Permian Basin, West Texas, called West Texas, and some portion of New Mexico, southeast New Mexico. So that's where
Hmm.
all the oil fields are, and it's still there. And it's like let's say a particular, let's say I would like call animal or industry. And the way it works, you need to mostly like operate locally. Sometimes there are some issue with the loyalty. It depends. That industry works like it fluctuates like the stock market, basically. That's where
Hmm.
you need to look at the barrels, the oil barrel price, and that's there you can determine how your business go. If we have a low price, then you need to be careful because they could bring like some competitors in. If the prices are high, like in the years I worked there, then you work like crazy, basically. You are
Interesting.
always there. So that's why it was one of the reason, I can't stand like the fluctuations, because there is like the ups and downs. The downs are okay. no more production. Prices are on the floor. Just go home. Like from today, tomorrow, you're gonna go home. We are not gonna do anything else. And
Hmm.
it happened to me when I was working with an integrator that we had like multiple enclosure, two doors, like a lot of Allen Bradley expensive stuff, let's say. And we had those panels sitting there like for probably 6, 8 months, doing nothing. They were ready like to go, and then they said, shut everything down, don't send them over. So that's kind of, and it happens, on other people too. So that's where I start seeing, hey, I don't know, if I like it, and then the that's my point of view, of course, but it's kind of repetitive, when you go, okay, you do the well pads, you do the tanks, farms, you do like, treatments, process station gas compression, and for me, like, it start to get like repetitive,
Hmm.
where I said, I don't know, it's not interesting anymore for me. So I start looking to, yes, still staying in what we do, but what if, I move to let's say, do robotics, to do automotive, do food and beverage, right? Uh, how does the industry looks like, what the technology they are using, and then I start seeing like this, increase in the robotics, and it caught my attention. That's why I start steering, toward manufacturing, let's say, more, factory automation, things like that. So
Did you have to learn at that point, I guess, robotics from scratch, or was it still something that you were fairly familiar with up to that point?
no, no, it's it's a big, jump, let's say, from
Hmm.
more controls, prone, more, processing to now, going to the motion, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, you have to, the learning curve, it's steep, I mean, it's still like, programming, don't get me wrong, but, we are moving to motion that, usually is more complex, right? Than doing like, maybe, drives, or, like sensors and, communication, things like that.
And I guess just to expand on that a little bit further before I pass it on to Dave, I guess when you talk about robotics, they can be used for a variety of different applications. I've personally done a lot of palletizing and sort of
Mhm.
packaging type of systems, but I know in automotive, for example, it can get quite complex, right, with multiple robots, multiple like axes operating together. Are you able to describe, in a general sense, some of the applications of robotics that you've been working in, or at least like which verticals?
Yes, absolutely. Like we although we have, in-house experience in automotive, we try to stay, away from that,
Mhm.
OEM, car manufacturer. Mostly like our application right now are, in the food and bev, uh, and adhesive. We have done like welding on the fabrication. We have done painting, and we are doing it, better said. So yeah, the applications that we are working right now, for example, are like, one is a press brake, and
Mhm.
it's for like accessory on the automotive accessory, and then another one, we have like a welding of dumpsters, so like trash dumpster, or boxes that can contain like oil, for the oil and gas industries.
Mhm.
And then there we have like, we have been using like trails. We have been using, RTUs, multiple robots, working on zone, like pretty much to where, referring to where you started the discussion, the automotive, to where that way to operate, multiple robots is like using zone, right? So and then on the other side, the press brake is one robot, and this is interfacing with like a rack with the material. So we are using like suction cup grippers right there, to move the parts. And then we had like another one, which was like a machine tending with the three
Mhm.
different, interface. And then we have developed like also like a two robots painting booth to paint like beams for solar panels installation. So those are the kind like of the applications. We we are having the opportunity to develop, right? And we are working
Yep.
right now on palletizer. Like I wish, seeing like the difficulties, like the challenges that we encounter on this application. I wish I could have like more, palletizer that, you know, most of the time are simpler than the one I described, because the welding, is not just welding. You have, the two robots plus we have like sim tracking system, and we had to develop on those one like a pneumatic slide, because on some spot the sim tracking head couldn't get there, so we have to retract the device, because otherwise we're gonna crash. So I wish sometimes, those are good. You're learning a lot. Don't get me wrong, but
Mhm.
sometimes you want to like something more simple, that you okay, yeah, one SKU, palletizer, let's go, right? Yeah, but the tendency is for us, okay, I got this challenge, and by the way, can you add this SKU? Can you add this? And then you start adding all of these variations that increase the difficulties, and it may change like your order, right? What you spec. So
Mhm.
it's been fun, don't get me wrong, but
Absolutely. Let me ask Davide. You shared a kind of a really interesting journey into robotics, and you shared some of the applications. Is the work that you're doing typically like we're part of a larger group and we are just the robot people and we're doing just the robot? Is it the end user has a problem and we are going to go do the robot and the controls, and maybe we're going to put some maybe we're going to go put some other things and some safety and some fixturing and all of that together? What does that typically look like for you guys?
for us, it's like usually like some companies are, good, pretty good size. Some are medium size, and what we can provide, in other words, is the robot integration, the safety and the control integration. One, two, three. For the electrical, we contract like subcontractors, electrical contractors that we know here locally, and then they can help us out, like bringing the three phase and what you need, including also the installation. We also have like mechanical groups that we subcontract as needed. So that's pretty much how it looks like. We can design everything from the layout to like the mechanical portion, the mechanical fabrication. Again, we outsource. So that's how it looks like for us. We can provide like the complete engineering solution,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't have like a part of the robotics and the controls, like building panels to including that. We don't have the capabilities to fabricate like
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and we don't really want to get there. We wanted to work with our partners here locally. There are like reason behind to because it's for me like it's running like another line of business. So you need to
Yes.
maintain. If you start buying like lathes, CNC,
Mm-hmm.
it's a big cost if you don't keep it them busy, right? So
Absolutely. That
that's
was in
why.
fact going to be one. My next question is: you talked about kind of the niche you have as part of the larger ecosystem. Do you want to get there? And I can certainly understand the idea of not wanting an extra 20,000 feet of shop space and all of the machines and all of the additional overhead that comes. That comes with it. There are lots of people that can go build a control panel. There are a lot of people that can go wiring your three-phase power. I think you guys have kind of that very special and specific niche. One more follow-up on the work that you're doing. So we had the conversation with you a couple of years ago. You were working, you had been working specifically within the robotic space for I think at least a year or two at that point.
Hmm.
Is there anything that you wish you knew 2 years ago that you knew now? It could be on robotics. It could be kind of as you've gone through and built the systems integration, you built the company. Is there anything that you would be willing to tell yourself from 2 years ago, or the listeners out there, maybe a couple of good things you did, maybe something that you wish you had done differently?
Well, I guess all the experience and the learning curve, to get to where we are right now. We made some mistakes. Even the most thing I would say is that I wish I would know, like when every time you get like a little bit bigger, opportunity, right? So and then increase the cost. So to be able to manage, like the quote phase, to take in account all the little details. That's what I wish I would know. Like even, of course, it takes like the technical aspect, the economical aspect, the management of the projects. Those are like the details that usually makes the difference to where you're gonna be successful or you're gonna fail. On a project. So definitely yes, that's the thing I wish I would have, like, but it's part of the journey, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will let Vlad ask a question, but I would agree that it's certainly part of the journey, and going through those sales processes and going through that as a business owner, as you are, is one of those things that it's really hard to learn before going through it yourself and doing it yourself. So completely agreed with what you're saying.
Yeah.
For me, as a follow up to that question, Davide, is I'm really curious. When I think about robotics, there's obviously a limited amount of players, just like in control systems, right? But the names that come to mind is obviously Fanuc, KUKA,
Hmm.
ABB that recently got acquired, right, by SoftBank,
Right.
which is a whole other
Yes.
separate conversation.
Yes.
There's UR, and then there's a lot of, I guess, other players from a variety of different markers that I would argue are smaller than the first four. And of course, that's I would have to review the financials to know that for sure. But ultimately, I'm curious how the decision to go towards Fanuc versus some of the others, as I'm sure you've probably had those conversations and thoughts and ideas. How did that maybe land you on the specific partnerships versus what were you considering maybe even at the time, and some learning points for engineers and small systems integrators looking to make those decisions today as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's a great question because when I started, this journey, right? So and then you see like what I've seen a lot of cobots, right? Collaboratives,
Hmm.
okay. So and you go to certain brand, and you get trained, and then you progress. You don't have any interaction because you're not doing any work, you know, with robotics or so. You just start, and that's what was my experience. And as I move forward, I learn more. So who are like the big players you mentioned, right? So and I start learning, what were the differences. I start, approaching. I saw them like where some were reluctant. You are nobody. What do you want, basically, right? So
Mm.
some they didn't even care. Whereas some they had like, they use distributors, and sometimes like the distributors, they take some of the jobs that instead you think, okay, you're going to collaborate with me, because again, going back to the details, which on a robotic, application, there are like way more, in my opinion, than, a control system, right? So, and everywhere there are details, and that's where, again, you're going to be successful or you're going to fail. So seeing that scenarios, and then basically, for example, with Fanuc, with which we work a lot with them. So I was on a podcast, right? So they invited me, and
Hmm.
you think like it's the leader in the market. They don't care about me, bright, whatever. And instead, I was with the actually was the global account manager for the food and beverage for Fanuc, and he was on this podcast. And then after the podcast, he contacted me. Hey, I saw you're doing this and that. Can we talk? I said, yeah, of course. And he amazed me, like how, they approach you, even, if you're nobody, right? And you're not doing anything. So, but they approach me, hey, look, this is what we can offer. We wanted to grow, like, the lock. We know there is a need, and we see that you're trying to make it happen. We want to help you. So basically, they offer me, like, the Robo Guide, which is the simulation software, for free. Which, basically, I became authorized system integrator. And then from there, we start, like they introduced me to all the resources, all the local guys, and then from there, we start growing together, and they are extremely helpful, in that aspect. So yeah, definitely that's, when we experience that, direct contact, the direct support, like they really like take care, of you, and they really like, value those relationships, not just looking at the big, firms that everybody knows, but even, like small guys like us, they really value that. And then, knowing that, then we went through, KUKA came a little bit later, but, they are starting doing the same thing, especially like this year, we increased the relationship with KUKA, they do like the event for the integrator. So I think, because for us, like, we are in between, and I think like a company, like those companies, like the one we mentioned, recognize that and value, like, our position, in the, let's say, automation supply chain. I think for us, like, it's very valuable, very, very valuable, and having them, in our back, like, yeah. So that's what we are looking, and that's why we selected, those companies to work with.
I'll be honest with you, I'm very surprised to hear that, right? And I, as you know, do not traditionally specialize in robotics. Obviously, I talk to a
Yeah,
lot of guys that do robotics, and usually my experience on the control system side, but also I would say in a very general sense with many vendors in our space, with the exception of a few, that is not a typical experience, right? As you've mentioned, I think usually you are expected to some extent to bring in leads and be at least to some extent known in the space before you get to a certain status, and there's obviously requirements to be met. So I'm surprised to hear that the how would I say, the onboarding, so to speak, with Fanuc was that smooth, right? And
yes,
I think
yeah,
that's super interesting, and I think it's key, right? And again, I've had many conversations with different companies, especially coming from different markets, and they don't quite understand the relationships between, the OEM or the hardware software provider versus distributor versus systems integrator, and how you need to nurture some of those relationships to be successful, at least in North America, right? In Europe and other parts of the world, things are done differently, but you need to be able to do this to be successful. So that is I think, a really good story for sure.
yeah,
Let me, like, I guess as a follow-up, right? And I think Dave touched on this a little bit. So just to understand a bit further, because robotics involve quite a bit of mechanical components in addition to programming
yeah.
and, the drives and the servos. So I'm curious how you're managing that aspect of some of the projects as you're maybe growing in size, or you're also doing now some of the CAD drawings, or you passing along that work to some of the contractors. I think that's a huge challenge. Let's say if I were to learn, let's say, Fanuc, and I know that they have their own language, Corel, but I'm curious what it would take to, let's say, build out some of those projects from ground up as an SI.
Yeah, that's a great question. Is in fact, like, that's where, like, you increase, like, the difficulty, from going from a traditional, control system to moving to robotics. You will still have, like, the control portion, which is usually, compared to, let's say, a batching system, or things of that sort of processing, application, or a refinery. It's more simplistic, in that sense. It's kind of, like the middleware, let's call the PLC. But then the mechanical portion, it's crucial, mechanical end of farm tooling, that part. So that's what we did basically. So first, knowing that we were going toward, like working more and more, and that was one of my goals, right? So we hired like a senior robotics engineer that is an expert in Fanuc. And then
Hmm.
for the mechanical portion, we outsources a little bit. I had a friend, still my friend, but at that time he was running his own company, so he did for some designs for us. But as work increased, I said I need to find a mechanical engineer, and that's what we did. We hired, a guy like 3 4 months ago, and then now we are full speed. And that time you are tituban to say, okay, can I keep him busy? And yes, he's now pretty busy, which is a good thing to see. Like it's like the challenge of being, a business owner, and say, okay, I need it right now, really need it, like full time. But what's gonna happen, in a couple of months? And we always have, things to build, to do. So yeah, definitely, like you said, we design everything, doing the layout, 3D modeling, and then sending out to like our partners, or what we have experienced, like with customers, that they take care of it, of the fabrication.
Hmm.
Some are like a fabrication business. So I said, okay, guess what? I'm gonna send you the drawing. You're gonna do it. Some other ones, they have like contacts, and some, of course, like, hey, we take care of it, right? But it's a way also that we approach, like this, let's say, collaborative, environment, where, okay, I can design you everything, and I specifically, like, do what we mentioned earlier. So because what's going to happen, like, when you win a project, so the portion that they do, like, let's say, fabrication costs, they're not going to be reflected in my contract. So it's a way also, like, to save, right, and to get through the purchase order quickly. So that's
Hmm.
what we have experienced, because that the fabrication, they can put like a internal, order, whatever, and it's not going to figure, in the balance sheet of the project that XYZ. So that's what, we say that all the time, because we know it's like a way, hey, of saving money and take away from the project, so we can win it quickly. But yeah, that's kind of, how we do it.
Dave?
Interesting. I'm going to go ahead and jump in. I've got a couple of questions. Would love to kind of dive in some more a little bit, Davide. Talking about the different robotic manufacturers, and
Hmm.
you've talked a little bit about your process and what the bid process looks like, and why and how you've built the team as you have, and I think that's very interesting. I guess, but before we go deeper into that, I'd love to know, you're talking to different people about robots. Are you
Hmm.
talking about robots in general? Are you talking about specific brands of robots? Does like one end user say, hey, I only want Fanuc robots because I've seen them? Does another user only say, hey, I only want UR robots because they're cobots and we've got 3 cobots on there? What do those conversations look like in kind of a medium highlight? I imagine those are the conversations you're having all the time.
Yeah, I mean, brand wise, yeah, there are, like, for sure, and then we tell them, hey, we support this, we have
Hmm.
experience, we can take care of it, on the existing one. But mostly it's like, in robotics, you have to go, it's not brand, related, it's application related, because
Hmm.
again, there is a hype of, seeing, this collaborative, like,
Hmm.
hype, right? So hey, let's
Yep.
put that. You need to look at the application, and the collaborative is not going to cost less of a robot
Hmm.
that is like an industrial robot, right? So we have that conversation. I know you saw that, but we want to educate you first. Like, what is your
Hmm.
application? Do you have human intervention or interaction? Yes or no? So then you maybe don't need a collaborative. So that's kind of, and as far as the brand, what we say, we work with this brand.
Hmm.
Why? Because apart that, like the top three, as far as like the quality, there is not too much difference.
Yep.
What's going to change? The people behind, always, and the service they can provide.
Okay.
The history of the company too. So those are the characters that I look, when I start like a relationship,
Okay.
and that's
I
why.
guess
Go ahead.
I was going to say, can you walk us through one of those conversations, right? So if someone is looking for a palletizer, maybe a new robot for a palletizer, kind of similar
Mm-hmm.
to what we were saying, I imagine that Fanuc and KUKA both have, I mean, outside of the heaviest things we could possibly want to lift, I
Yeah.
imagine that Fanuc and KUKA and probably UR and probably a bunch of other brands have medium to large sized robots that could be the arm for a palletizer.
Right.
Like what are the sort of conversations that you have with an end user, either ones who say, hey, this is the brand I really like, or one of the ones who are saying, hey, Davide, I just really need a robotic arm that can go
Right.
solve my palletizing needs.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, palletizing, you need to look like first, at the payload. Again, do you
Mm-hmm.
have like human interaction, and then the rate, how fast you want to go. So those like, can get rid of the cobots real quick,
Yep.
because when we increase the speed, and then
Mm-hmm.
then you need to go industrial, because what's gonna happen, when we go and walk, the plan down. And, okay, I got this, I want to do that, and then at the beginning, oh, that's fine, maybe, with this type of speed. But what is always happening, always, when you get like the application up to speed, can you go faster? Can you go faster? No.
Yep.
Sometime, because you wanted this. I told you, it's cool,
Mm-hmm.
the collaborative, etc. Everybody talks about it, but what do you really need? And
Yep.
that's why we say be careful, because okay, you got like the palletizer, you have the mobile, you bring in with a pallet jack, there are like
Mm-hmm.
so many of that out there, and they work great, but what is the purpose? Because as we know, like you are in the production environment, what's gonna happen? Let's go faster. Can this thing go faster? No,
Yep.
And then, of course, like another limitation. Okay, what is your payload? How many SKUs? So I got like 50 pounds. Okay, that's it, right? You have to use like a 4-axis, regular, industrial palletizer
Mm-hmm.
at that point. Like those are the basic, like conversation that you can intercept what they need, right? And then there needs to be like the infrastructure to feed like the machine, right? Which in this case, again, palletizer is going to be a conveyor, and then you're going to put a cage or hybrid, safety, but the safety assessment needs to be there all the time,
Yep.
even in the collaborative, all the time. And that's something that we see some nightmare scenario sometimes, when we go in. But yeah.
Let me ask you, I guess, a follow-up to that question on cobots, right? But maybe expand that a little bit to the manufacturers, let's say coming out of Asia and China specifically, that are purely competing on price, right? So
Yeah.
to the same question as like the cobots, is there a major difference between, some of the top brands versus, hey, instead of buying this 70K arm, can we buy this $30,000 arm, right? I'm curious, what are the differentiators on, maybe features, maybe other add-ons, based on your experience?
Well, yes, for me, like, like I said earlier, for me is like the quality of the brand. So I look at those different aspects, not just the price. Usually when we approach the customer, I always say, we are not like the cheapest. We are gonna stay in between. We propose and promote quality. That's
Hmm.
our way to work. Now going to this, there is why we saw like a surging of this, Asian Chinese brand, because Asian is Fanuc is Asian too, because
Hmm.
there is the made of China, like political proposal that everything needs to be made in China. So that's where we saw this increase. So the problem is, okay, you bring over an arm, where is the support, where is at least the sales guy, the application engineer here locally, when we are going to deploy the application, where those servos are coming from, where they're harnessing, the cable. So the robot, like, yeah, if it goes down, it goes down, it's a lot of money. What are those spare parts? The infrastructure that needs to be behind, like in every company, no matter what, and mostly like, in the robotics, because it's both mechanical and electrical, it's enormous, right? So that's the question you need to ask, to yourself and to maybe, this company is coming from there. If you don't have the basic, the baseline, you're not going to go anywhere. That's what it needs to happen, right? So that's why we stick, with these brands, and then not talking about like the options, because okay, let's take Fanuc, handling tool, and that's what you usually buy for the majority of the application. But let's say you need to do welding, so you need to select the arc option. The painting has the paint tool, right? So, and so on and so forth. There are like so many different things, but those are like the basic, right? So, and who is going to teach us, like how to use those, if there are even, the palletizer too, the Pallet Pro is, it facilitate your, especially like on a welding, you need to work on the schedules, and then you need to call the schedules. It's specifically for that application, the painting, you call the jobs and so on and so forth. So do they have the staff, where is the support, when you call it, when they're going to answer? So, and then, how good those servos are, because if you put like an arm, like the way the automotive use those arms, how long is going to happen? It's going to last. Those are the questions you have to then, because you put like an equipment on your customer, plant floor, and that's your responsibility on what you're putting there, right, at the end. So.
Yeah, and it's an interesting dilemma, right? I don't obviously have an answer on whether it's right or wrong, but ultimately, the end customer has agreements in place, usually with SIs that will take on the maintenance side of that equipment, that will hopefully, and again, it depends on the contract, guarantees a certain percentage of uptime, but also has agreements on, what the speed, or I guess the throughput of the palletizer or whatever other machine should be. So I think to them, it doesn't quite matter if they can pay 50K less for just on the arm side, as long as you can guarantee the uptime. You as the SI basically need to some extent eat up the cost of that difference, make sure that you're up to speed on the tech, and ultimately I think it puts some pressure right on the vendors and the pricing and whatever is happening in North America as a result of those cheaper alternatives.
Yeah, but you mentioned like, okay, I come in with the lower price, and then I need to balance, because maybe I'm gonna do a lot of maintenance calls. So then that
Mm.
gap is not there anymore, because I need to add to my warranty. So if I buy an arm from China, then my warranty needs to be higher, and then there are like a lot of variables that can happen, like the usage of the robot, how they use it, things like that, and if they start like tweaking, and playing with it, there are so many like things to consider. But definitely, like I'm not gonna be the guy that is gonna try these new brands.
Hmm.
I
Gotcha.
stick to what I know, like, and I don't wanna explore, and this stuff. I can look and see, right? So I see what's going on. I monitor and see what is coming up. Maybe some are strong enough to have that baseline, and then we can
Hmm.
talk about,
Makes sense.
Let
Go
me
ahead, Dave.
jump in and ask you a question, Davide. So you were saying one of the things that you look out for is knowing that, hey, we're going to go run off to this baseline, but everyone always wants to go faster, right? It's probably not all that dissimilar to people who have PLCs, and instead of specifying PLCs to 100% IO, we're going to go in 100% rack fillage. We are going to go through and we're going to leave some space for some additional IO. We're going to leave some space for additional IO cards or modules in the rack. So when you're looking to specify, how do you go through and kind of balance knowing the fact that they will eventually want to run faster because everyone at some point wants to run faster, with the fact that it may take you to like another category of robot, and that category of robot might be much more expensive? Is that a conversation that you have with them? How does that go? Because I feel like it's an important conversation, but it also might be a little touchy of a conversation because you're like, this one is $20,000 more expensive, but you get all of these features.
Well, we at some point, we can always suggest, like, and this going back to this hype, cobots vs robots, right? We tell you, look, those are the data you want to obtain. Don't use the company, the corporates, they are convinced they want the cobot, and this has happened. This happened is a real story.
Mm-hmm.
We say to them, look, again, think about it. That's fine. And guess what happened? Then we brought like the system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can we go faster? And the answer is no, because you didn't listen to me at the beginning. Oh, okay. And we cranked it up that thing, like up to 100%. I said, I don't know, if we surely are gonna drop like, the longevity, because you go like running through the edge, and even if it's like a top brand, but running through the edge is not good. But yeah, those are some listen, some they're convinced. Like I said, from corporate level, we saw this, we wanted this, and let's do that, right? So, and then another thing that happened. So okay, you have a cobot, right? So we put like 2 safety scanners, and then later on, this is too risky, and then they cage everything. I said, so why you're using the cobot, right? You could have saved the cobot on the same size is always more expensive than a regular arm. Not talking about going, like 3,000 millimeter arm, it's gonna cost more, but on the same size, because of the force sensor and all the features that carries, it costs more. So you're going to save money and you're going to get faster. Guess what? I think it's a good equation, but guess, they don't think through. And this lack of knowledge, but you try to educate them, as much as possible. But when, people like, it works the way, with people, you get with an idea, you fix in your mind, and it's hard to get out from that mindset, right? And that's kind of what the conversation are, right there, and to be able
Absolutely,
to steer to a better decision at the end, right? Versus like happy medium maybe.
Absolutely. Are you normally successful in kind of going and showing them the values of potentially upsizing the cobot to be able to run faster, to be able to do, or I'm sorry, the robot to be able to run faster, to be able to do more things? Or is that sometimes, I like to call them a live and learn situation, right? Where we've spent all of this money and we've lived through the build process, and that we've learned that we cannot run faster than what we have specified because we did not go large enough.
Well, our tool is always like the simulator, like before we do anything. So utilizing let's say, digital twin, or, there are like every, major brand has its own like, simulator. And then by using that, so we put together like the cell, right? So, and then we can also see the cycle time, and then we can run some math right there, right? So we can definitely, do the comparison between, different model, different, cobot versus robot. So, and that's where, we can show them, look, that's what we are thinking, what do you think, and it depends on some, customer teams, they have the knowledge too, because they deploy directly. So they said, hey, maybe, we can change this and that because, we have experience. And that's always, better conversation because, both we know, and you share the ideas. But when it gets tricky, where there is not too much, there is lack of knowledge, and then that's where you're trying to fight against 3 or 4 guys, and and they have the firm ideas, that's when. But the simulation, like I said, it's always like a good, tool to before, when you do like the sales process, the proposal, and then after when you start refining the system.
Absolutely.
And
Let me ask you.
Yeah, that,
I was going to say, let me ask you kind of a slightly broader question, because you had mentioned that there are a number of clients, a number of people who already have robots, maybe did some robots internally, and I feel like you can't go, a day without talking about how many more robots we have today versus yesterday versus last year versus 10 years ago. But I also feel like every month I talk to a group who's like, we would like to go figure out robots for the first time, or we tried robots back in the 80s and 90s and they didn't work and we gave up on them. But here we are 30 or 40 years later, quite literally, and we still need to go figure out some robots. So on your side, are you generally finding that you're working with and talking to people who have been successful in bringing robots in, or are you generally finding and working with people who have not experienced robots within that facility successfully?
is a mix, yes.
Okay.
Mostly like that there are some failures, there are some fights, and because of the amount of details, like if you lack on your due diligence, that's where an application fails, right? And sometimes miserably, and then what's happening is that people start hating the robots, and that's where it's the hardest part to convince them back. I don't want to hear about that. There's something like that. Like I said, show me what's wrong. Maybe we can fix it, and try to get back, to bring back that conversation. Whereas, some other ones, they already have it, hey, we got this brand, and we wanted to add more, like, and I came across, to your website, I saw you do this, and then we start talking. That's easy, right? We want to do this, can you do that? Okay. And then we just like saw like the advantage, right? But there are some that, like I said, or another example is like on specific industries that they're more prone to use like more traditional machines, right? Especially in the food and beverage, they are used to use like those machines, like that they do like, one or two SKU grade, right? And that's where it's probably the hardest. You have the baby boomers, the old dogs, that we call, and no, forget about that. We have like that machine, from that brand, we have been using that like on all the plants, don't even talk about that. So there is like that generational, problem, let's say problem for us, right? So to overcome, and then some like bad experience, like, yeah, they failed miserably, that now, they are cautious. Say we put this, and you're going to see, we have seen like massive systems that, with 6 robots that they're sitting there, collecting dust. That's sad, like, and, you feel bad, but yeah, it happens, yeah.
I would say that if there's anyone listening that has a lot of systems collecting dust, we would definitely take them at a discount. But that is a conversation that would be separate for sure.
Vlad's new industrial scratch and dent. This may be my second favorite business that Vlad has ever pitched live on television. Davide, I think it was 2 years ago, right before Automate. Vlad started talking about making peanut butter and the horrors that is making peanut butter. And then he just started listing peanut butter recipes live during the show. So Vlad's industrial scratch and dent robotics company is probably number 2 on my top ideas of crazy things that Vlad has pitched live during the show. I'm sorry, Vlad, please continue.
There is a market of scratch.
There is a market.
There are some guys up there in the Midwest that's what they do for a living.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let me, I guess, Davide, transition this conversation a little bit to an interesting point, right? So a couple of years ago, speaking of automate,
Mhm.
I remember seeing you with a brand of servo drives and motors
Yes.
from Italy. I guess like curious, not just that experience, but in general, again, like going back to the maybe earlier days of systems integration. And I certainly, how would I say, don't have a lack of people pitching me different products coming from
Yeah.
outside of North America looking to bring those brands in. So I'm curious what has that experience been for you, and ultimately maybe some learning points, because I think a lot of us are looking in a couple of different directions and maybe exploring options and opportunities. And sometimes, again, to the earlier points of this conversations, it is not possible to just open up shop and, let's say, go to the largest vendor and be accepted with open arms. So you basically go to other brands that will, right? So I guess curious about your thoughts on that side.
Well, yeah, yes, sure. The experience. So where this started, I was servicing a plant in here in the
Hmm.
DFW, and the customer say, hey, I know you're Italian, and I got an Italian machine. That's the brand, CMZ. I said, I don't know them. So you open the box, and I look, I take a picture, and then I do my own research, and I contact them, right? So I said, do you have anyone, seems to be interesting, he runs with codices, you got all of this, servos and then stepper, it could be interesting, to bring in, right? So then we start talking. But the thing is that it's common for a lot of European. I spoke like with another guy yesterday. He's from Germany. He said to me, "Yeah, we know how it works." Yes, European, Asian. Going back to the made in China. Those Chinese robots. Yes, the problem is like you need to understand how the U.S. market works. First is very, very competitive. There are a lot of opportunities, yes, but you need to go here and get the opportunities, which means going back to that baseline. So if let's say, okay, I'm building PLC, okay, I have Allen Bradley, I have Siemens, I have Wago, I have blah 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 blah. So I have to go at least, I have a codices platform. I'm gonna compete with Wago, with Beko, whatever, Bosch. So they have baseline and more, right? So you have to have the basic. That's what I'm trying. That's what it's super hard to make them understand because I said, and I'm running a business. I said, what do you think that someone brought to me like hey, build this system, this control system? No, I have to go and find it. And it's going to be the same thing for you. You need to build like a presence and then build on top of it. I'm not saying like spend like $5 million. Start with a sales guy and then some support. We can help with the support and then start getting those contacts, and little by little, you scale. And they seem not to get it. So that's my big, and yeah, I it's not a great, like outcome. And I think, like this relationship probably maybe it's gonna end. I would say, because yeah, to me, like of course, my core business is what we just discussed, so far, and adding more, like streamlines, it's good, but they need to work. There needs to be reciprocal, help, right? So it's like to me, like I'm thinking as a tennis game, the ball needs to go, back and forth
Hmm.
or you, yeah. So that's the best example, right? So that's kind of my experience. I think it's a common experience. I can talk for the Italian companies. I know, of course, the country,
Hmm.
and I know the way they're thinking. There are some terms like I don't know if I can translate where provincial is called, like to where you have that mindset that is like a localized, to my little town, that's the way we are doing over here, and then they think that here in the US, it's going to be the same. And then they think, hey, before we do even a move, we need to have an opportunity. Yes, but the point is you have to create an opportunity. How do you create an
Mhm.
opportunity? You need to build like something around, right? Because the conversation that we had, like, we had different conversations that were looking good, but as soon as the customer asks, hey, is there any support here locally from the factory? No. Do you have any stock? No. So you're out, period.
Let me ask, I guess, like a more direct question. Again, putting myself in the shoes of maybe an early systems integrator who is, and I guess you and I know a lot of guys who are very good on the technical side and are starting something where they would like to do more contract work. They're trying to find opportunities
Hmm.
and they're looking at some of these partnerships as, to some extent, as a sales channel, right? They're hoping that the OEM will bring them into a couple of opportunities and they can execute on the technical side, design the system, program the system, etc. So I guess my question for you is, how do you evaluate those opportunities now, having had that experience? How would you tell someone earlier in those stages, maybe what kind of conversations would you have with those OEMs? What questions would you ask? And how would you say, hey, this is a go or no go in terms of a partnership?
Well, first, first and foremost is like your network is your network, and that's the first thing. So for me, is very important. Now, your sales pitch, your idea. So how you propose yourself out there. It needs to be some way somehow unique. You need to convince them to work with you. Like, hey, I'm trying to do this. I'm by myself. But I have a lot of experience technically speaking. Can we work together? That's what every guy that asks me, I want to start this. Hey, you have to build your local network. Period. Because you have limited resources. I know you're really good technically speaking, but you need to have that unique selling proposition. You need to fill some gaps. You need to find. That's how you find the opportunities. Like there are some gaps in the local market. Let me fill those gaps. Like maybe you start like we did servicing. There was nobody,
Hmm.
servicing. They needed quickly. They want to do the upgrade. The line were going down, so that's how we started. And then now, thank God we grow. We're still doing, some services, but not at the level that when we started. So that's kind of, like the mindset you need. You need like to learn. In other words, like other skill sets. The technical portion, yes, when you go and do it and execute, but then all the stuff in between to find, like the opportunities, you need to learn how to sell, your stuff. You need to build like the sales pitch. Hey, I'm here and there. I work, the company. Hey, I know the guys over there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then they maybe make a phone call or like they're referring to you some way somehow. So that's how like organically you build and then try to get the help from these OEMs that they have of course more capability, more horsepower in their engine to reach out, and then they can pass you like some good contacts that you can build like your business from. Then you start like adding, of course. It doesn't get easier, because as you grow, you have people, then you have the managing, aspect, it's hard, but to start, you are on your own, it's kind of, let's say, pretty straightforward. You have to figure out, but then the difficulties are, when you have people, the payrolls, and all of that, and then how you are structuring your company and then building the systems too. That's what's going to be the next step to be able like to actually try to step out, and then let the company run.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Dave, what are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I agree with what you're saying, Davide. I think you brought up a lot of good points. in growing an organization and helping organizations come over to North America. And that's definitely been my experience, having worked with a number of them from Asia, from Europe, and other ways. I agree that lots of them think that there should be opportunities and maybe don't understand the competitiveness of the landscape over in the US. Whereas I know lots of groups who built the thing that they needed, coming and trying to go bring this solution to North America. It is no longer one of one, it is one of 50, right? And so it is difficult, and it takes a lot more time and money and investment to have a physical footprint, and going and hiring and similar to what you were saying, if it's not core to your business, and we know a couple of people whose business it is in theory core to, that they go represent these organizations, and for them they've found a way to make it make sense. I think it's really difficult to go do that without investment from that organization. And to your point, going through and building your organization, if you're very specific on the robotic side, going and adding yourself a second or third or fourth full-time job, trying to go share what some of these other groups have, is not sustainable. Is not sustainable long term, unless there's a lot of reciprocation from that other group of, this is how we're going to grow, this is how we're going to build, this is the direction we're going to go. And to your point, it's really hard to say, hey, our replacements best case scenario are 2 days away. Like best case scenario, we put someone on a plane in Italy, we fly them overnight, they walk it through customs, and we're like 24, 36 hours if it's in stock on the part shelf. And so suddenly this $300 item, the replacement may be $3,000 or $4,000, because we've got to send someone over. I have dealt with having to send someone over from Europe for a critical part in the past, and the only way to get through next day is to physically put someone on an airplane. Next day shipments all sit through customs through some period of time. I feel like that could be a conversation for like several hours in and of themselves. Having said this has been an absolutely fantastic conversation. We want to be respectful of everyone's time. For our new listeners who maybe haven't heard us before, we always have the same, or I suppose we've added to the list of questions that we always ask our guest at the end. The first one is one of my most favorite. It's predict the future. So Davide, you've given us so many different points of where we are now on the robotic side. You've given us so much information. From your perspective, where do industrial robots, or where does systems integration of industrial robots, where are we 2 or 3 years in the future?
A lot more applications. To me, like what we are going through, we're going through with a big change, like in every aspect of the societies, and including, like, of course, the manufacturing. And all the activities, that recently are happening, is just accelerate this trajectory, right? So for me, like, what I see, like the end user, and I tell the end user, look, whether you want to do it, like you like it or not, you will have to implement, like some sort of automation, and because just to get to stay up to speed with your competitors, or otherwise you're going to fail. You're going to go out of business because they are faster. So here in Texas, just in Texas, like we discussed about oil and gas, we have pretty much every type of industry. Like now, just like 2 hours from here, OpenAI is building the Stargate, massive, facility. That's just one, then, Tesla, SpaceX, we have all the defense industry. Just here, it's crazy, right? What's happening here, and more companies are coming in from overseas, or, then not to mention the semiconductor too, which is big, like over here, just north of me. So yeah, batteries, minerals, mining, you name it. So it's what we are seeing, just boiling, right? So then imagine, like in 3 years, like the level of, interconnectivity, automation, that we are going to have on the plants is just I can't even imagine. I can't picture it, but I can see what the trajectory is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I certainly agree that trajectory, like lots of times you used to call it a hockey stick. It seems like it
Yes.
should be a straight, nearly straight
A
vertical
wall.
line.
Right.
Yes, exactly. A wall. And I think that'll all be good and interesting for all of us. Kind of going and talking about that on the robotic side, we always like to ask for some career advice. And now I just want to remind the listeners, on episode 129, when we had Davide on, we talked a lot about his journey to make it over to the US and the stop in Puerto Rico and all of that. So if you guys want some career advice on that journey, 100% go back and listen to episode 129. Having said that, I would love some career advice on the robotics side, on the systems integrator side. So if someone is looking to get into robotics, maybe someone is looking to make a career change into robotics, not all that dissimilar from what you did a few years ago. What is the best advice you can give them, please?
Like a few years ago, there were some resources, on the web, but not at the level that there are right now. So just, what we say to the people, you need to have the willingness to learn. The information are out there, or you can pay like courses like online for a few bucks. You can get up to speed, right? So that's the cost.
Yep.
Of course, you want to go get certified with Fanuc and KUKA. You pay $3,000 and plus the travel. But now we are on a level. Okay, we have the simulator. With the simulator, you can really learn from there, right? So there are people like again, online courses, or in person. They teach you either with the robot, or like with the simulator online. So again, you can start from there. There are like every type of pathway that you can imagine right now, from free YouTube. You want to learn the PLC, I always suggest, download codices is free. You run the codices on your laptop, watch a bunch of video. Okay, you maxed out the video, go to the paid courses.
Yep.
And that's what I did, like back in the day. There were like a couple of courses in Udemy. I used those, but now, forget about it. Like, and there are like some certified, school to, of course, you need to invest in yourself, right? So
yes.
There are some costs, right? Especially the robots, okay, the simulator. But if you wanted to touch it, you need to have like a facility to where they have it, like there, and then you can play with it. Also, it's interesting, like. On the manufacturing operator side, connecting this discussion to what is happening in the industry and overall, like what I believe, those operators at the plants, if they not reskill themselves, then you're not going to have a job. Why? Because now, we are putting all of this, machines automated. So you need to have the ability to operate those machines, which includes like, operating robots. And that's what I believe, we now are, we saw that, we are seeing that. So we start like offering to the end user, like a training here at the facility, plus, of course, the training on the floor. Because we saw there is a need, right? So, and there is also like skepticism. Okay, oh no, we are going to include this, and I don't know how to use it. So we wanted to overcome that, and plus is an opportunity for them. And I always bring like an example. Look, we teach how to use a robot to a painter, a guy with 0 degree, and he was painting the parts. Now the robot is painting the parts for him. And he's able to touch up, to clear the faults, to run the machine. In like a couple of days, we teach him, basically, right?
Wow.
So then he send us pictures. Hey, what do you do? Okay, do this, do that. Okay, I go there, bam, and fix it. The push is for us is we wanted to empower the end users to do more. That's what we propose, and everybody needs to learn, this. And if you're not going to learn, then yeah, guess what? Don't cry later.
Absolutely.
So
No,
that's kind of.
I love that, Davide. I really like the example of the painter
Yeah,
as well.
I love it.
Yes. Next, we'd like to ask you for some book recommendations. And you said you've got a book or a couple of books for us today.
Yeah, I mean, the first for me, as a believer, the Bible. I suggest everyone to read the Bible first, and then I have a couple of books that I recently read. Like one is Extreme Ownership
Mm-hmm.
with Jocko Willink. So it's I think Vlad has that book. That's good, like for leadership, under pressure. There you go. And then the other one is, again, this one is buy back your time with Dan Martell.
Okay.
Pretty good. Like I start like following him, on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
He is a guy that owns like a lot of AI companies.
Okay.
He
Interesting.
is self-made. He went to prison. In prison, he learned like how to write codes. And then now, like he's an angel investor now at this point, but it's good, like, like offloading, like that's where he's good at. So I want to grasp more, offloading your, like what you're doing to, like decentralize, like the task, either from administrative task, to project management. So yeah, it's been interesting, that this one to read.
Absolutely. No, I think all of those are very interesting. Fantastic. Well, I've only read two of the three, so fantastic recommendations all the way through. Next, final question is a new question from Vlad. So Davide, you'll have to give us feedback after this, and the listeners will have to let us know if they like this. But if you could snap your fingers and create any kind of startup or a hardware solution or a software solution or technology in our space, what would you like to see?
That's a great question. In fact, it's what I'm thinking right now to do
Okay.
as a next step, right? So for me, like, having like let's say a standard line, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
another stream of, business that I think it needs to happen, for a variety of reasons,
Mm-hmm.
First is like to have like, a constant stream of income, and then if you in the future you want to sell your company, like you can demonstrate, hey, I have this, continuous revenue, right? Because what we do, it's great. It brings challenge. You learn a ton, but it's all custom, right?
Mm-hmm.
So every time change. I wish I said we continue to do this. Yes, of course, we love it. But if we can invent something, so a couple of ideas, like like we have developed like a case vector, like last year. I think we wanted to resume that. And then I'm studying a lot on the painting, like to
Okay.
tracing the paths on robotic painting. That is an interesting one that I wanted to dig down, but the basic thinking is now with this AI, revolution, what we can empower the machine to do, right? So what we can
Mm-hmm.
solve on those applications that traditionally are, hard coded, right? So we collaborating with those companies that they are focusing, on developing, the models, right? So, and we know like a bunch of them. So what we can do, some of them they show us, hey, now there is a company is in the food and beverage, for example, you have the wash down day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Usually Saturday, right? So then
Hmm.
they have this AGV robot that is doing the wash down on the equipment, right? So that's what we could trigger, as you can see, manual application with the technology that we are developing, what we can build. That is like what is triggering me. Like those two aspects, having like a standard product off the shelf, plus solving a problem, let's say, like, or getting things faster, like on
Hmm.
works that is tedious, wash down, it's recognized to, like that they use third party, so they tend to destroy the equipment,
Yep.
and because they want to go fast, and then we fix so many things and we laugh to, on what they
Yep.
destroyed, but it's a problem, like it has a cost. So then I saw these guys, developing this little, robot that is washing the equipment. Um, but
No,
yeah,
I like that. I was in fact laughing because Vlad and I have had many, many hours of conversation, at least some of them on this show, talking about things that just get absolutely destroyed when hot water inevitably
yeah,
coats and covers them, or as I've shared, VFDs that just get powered down by removing power, and then we just cycle power on the line until we've got enough VFDs that will come back up that we can replace the ones that won't, and then we continue on. So no, I'm
yeah,
laughing for the probably millions, tens of millions of dollars that we have seen absolutely destroyed on the line, but for whatever reason seems almost like a cost of doing business
yes,
to some of these organizations. So that
yes.
was fantastic. Last question for you, Davide, is how can our listeners help? Who should reach out? Who are you looking to connect with? Kind of your open forum to ask anything that we can do.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can reach out to me, here on LinkedIn, and on the website, of course. But I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and for me, like if everyone who wants to pick up a conversation with me, feel free again, to send me a message on LinkedIn, and
Mhm.
I can reply back to you. Basically, yeah, that's the easiest way. Yeah.
Awesome. That was perfect. Davide, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on. We are excited to hear about how Texas Automation Stars. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Perfect. We are excited to hear how Texas Automation Stars year 2 goes. That's December. We will 100% through the power of Vlad manually doing it. Make sure to go add that both to the event and also the show notes if you guys are listening, hopefully before December and you're in the DFW area and you want to come out and meet Davide and the other folks in person. Everyone, thank you for joining us. Again, next week on Monday, we've got a recording from ICC where Vlad, I, and David Grusenmeyer all get together in order to talk about the student build-a-thon and in order to go talk about the education side of the inductive automation community. We'll be back live Wednesdays this month to continue our systems integration theme. Until next time, we'll talk to everyone soon.